The child saw everything. She did not mean to. She was only 7. She had woken up thirsty in the middle of the night and gone to find water. But on her way to the clay pot in the corner of the hut, she saw the door to the cooking house was open. And through that open door, she saw her mother. Her mother was standing over the fire. The pot was bubbling. The smell, that rich, impossibly delicious smell that made every person in the village close their eyes and smile, was filling the air. But her mother was not cooking the way other mothers cooked. She was not cutting vegetables. She was not grinding pepper. She was not stirring with a wooden spoon. She was standing over the pot with her arms stretched out to either side, her head tilted back, her eyes rolled completely white, and from her open mouth came a sound that the child had never heard before, a low, vibrating hum that made the walls of the cooking house tremble. And the pot was filling itself from nothing, from the air, from the sound. The pot was filling with food that had no source, no origin, no earthly explanation. The child dropped her cup. It shattered on the ground. Her mother's eyes snapped forward, normal again, brown, human, warm. She looked at her daughter and she smiled. That same gentle, loving smile. Go back to bed, Adana. But the child did not go back to bed. The child ran. And what she told the village the next morning would destroy everything. This is the story of Nkechi, the wife who cooked the best food in the village, and the terrible price of every single meal. Obiora was not a lucky man. The people of Umueke village knew this the way they knew the sun would rise. It was simply a fact. Obiora was born during a thunderstorm so violent that it split the oldest tree in the village square in 2. His mother died bringing him into the world. His father, broken by grief, drank himself into silence and then into the ground before Obiora turned 10. By the time he was a young man, Obiora had nothing. No inheritance, no family compound, no cattle, no yam barn. He lived in a small, leaking hut at the edge of the village, farming a narrow strip of land that the chief had given him out of pity. He was not ugly. He was not stupid. He was not lazy. He was simply overlooked. The kind of man that other men forgot to invite to palm wine gatherings. The kind of woman that women's eyes slid past the way water slides past a stone. And Obiora had accepted this. He had made his peace with a quiet, small life. He would farm his strip of land. He would eat his simple meals of cassava and water. He would sleep alone in his leaking hut. And one day he would die, and the village would forget he had ever existed. That was the plan. Until Nkechi arrived. She came to Umueke during the dry season, when the earth was cracked and the river was low and even the air felt tired. No one knew where she came from. She simply appeared one morning at the village market, carrying a small bundle on her head and wearing a white wrapper so clean it seemed to glow. She was beautiful. Not the sharp, obvious beauty that made young men fight and old men remember. Hers was a quieter kind. The kind that crept up on you slowly and then hold you. Soft, round face. Deep brown eyes that seemed to hold a warmth you could feel from across the room. Skin the color of roasted palm kernel. Smooth, dark, luminous. And when she smiled, it was like watching the sun find a gap in the clouds.
Every man in the village noticed her. Every single one.
But she chose Obiora.
No one understood it. The chief's son Ikenna, tall, wealthy, handsome, the kind of man who walked through the village like he owned the ground beneath his feet. He had offered Nkechi everything. A compound with 7 rooms, servants, gold. She refused him with a gentle shake of her head and a soft thank you, but no. Obiora's friend, the blacksmith Chukwudi, a broad-shouldered man who could bend iron with his bare hands. He had brought her gifts of carved wood and fresh game. She thanked him kindly and sent him away. When asked why, always, by everyone, repeatedly, with disbelief, Nkechi would simply say, "The heart knows where it belongs." And so, Nkechi married Obiora. And from the moment she stepped into his leaking hut, everything changed. First, she repaired the roof, not by calling men to help. She did it herself, weaving palm fronds so tightly that even the heaviest rain could not find a way through. Obiora watched in amazement. He had lived with that leak for years. Then, she planted a garden. Within weeks, impossibly, unreasonably quickly, the garden was bursting with herbs and vegetables that the village had never seen. Green so dark they were almost black. Peppers so red they seemed to pulse with their own heat. Tomatoes the size of a child's fist, so ripe they looked painted. But it was the cooking. The cooking is what changed everything. The first time Nkechi cooked for Obiora, he sat on his wooden stool and watched her bring the clay bowl to him. It was a simple meal, or it appeared to be. Jollof rice, stewed meat, fried plantain, nothing that 100 other wives in the village did not cook every day. But the moment the first bite touched his tongue, Obiora felt something he had never felt before. It was not just taste. It was memory. It was warmth. It was the feeling of being a child again, sitting on his mother's lap, safe and loved and whole. Every flavor opened a door inside him that he thought had been closed forever. The rice was not just seasoned, it was alive with something. A richness that went beyond pepper and oil and onion. A depth that seemed to vibrate in his chest. He ate the entire bowl. And when he was finished, he looked up at Nkechi with tears in his eyes. She smiled. That quiet, warm smile. "There is more," she said. There was always more. Within 3 months, Obiora was unrecognizable. His body, once thin from years of simple cassava meals, had filled out. His skin, once ashen from poor nutrition, now glowed. His eyes, once dull with resignation, were bright and alive. He walked through the village, not with the shuffle of a forgotten man, but with the stride of someone who had been claimed, someone who belonged to somebody. And it was not just Obiora. Nkechi began cooking for others. Not because she was asked, she simply appeared. When old Mama Ada fell ill and could not lift herself from her mat, Nkechi arrived at her hut with a steaming pot of pepper soup that made the old woman sit up, eat 3 bowls, and declare that she felt 20 years younger. When the village children were thin and listless during the dry season, When other families were rationing their yam stores, Nkechi would set up an enormous pot in the village square and feed every child who came. The food never ran out. No matter how many children lined up with their bowls, the pot always had more. When the chief himself fell sick with a cough that had lasted 3 weeks, a cough that the medicine man's herbs could not touch, Nkechi brought him a broth. 1 bowl. The cough was gone by morning. The village loved her. Loved her. The women called her Neoma, good mother. The children ran to her when they saw her coming. The men clapped Obiora on the back and called him the luckiest man in Umueke. And Obiora believed it. For the first time in his life, he was not invisible. He was not pitied. He was envied. But not everyone was smiling. Ikena, the chief's son, the man Nkechi had rejected, watched all of this with a face like a clenched fist. He said nothing publicly. He smiled when others spoke of Nkechi's cooking. He nodded when they praised her. But in private, he whispered, "Where does she get it?" The question was simple and unanswerable. Because Ikena had noticed something that no one else had. Something that the warmth of Nkechi's food and the fullness of their stomachs had blinded them to. Obiora's farm had not improved. His strip of land was the same narrow, stubborn piece of earth it had always been. His yam harvest was modest. His cassava crop was small. He had no livestock. He had no money. And yet Nkechi cooked as though she had access to the stores of a king.
The meat in her stews was rich, tender, and abundant. But Obiora did not hunt. The fish in her soups was fresh and plentiful. But the river was 2 hours' walk away, and no one ever saw Nkechi at the river. The spices in her food were complex and layered, flavors that the village's own market did not sell. Where was it coming from? Ikena began to ask others, quietly, carefully, and he discovered that he was not the only one wondering. The market women had noticed. Nkechi never bought meat from them. She never bought fish. She never bought pepper or crayfish or palm oil in the quantities that her cooking demanded. She bought small things, salt sometimes, a handful of utazi leaves, nothing more. Perhaps she buys from the next village, one woman suggested. She never leaves the village, another replied. I would know, I watch the road. Then her husband buys for her. Obiora, he cannot afford a goat, let alone the meat she serves. Silence. The question hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire, invisible but impossible to ignore. Where did the food come from? Adana was Nkechi's only child, 7 years old. Small for her age, with her mother's deep brown eyes and her father's quiet way of watching the world as though she was memorizing it. Adana loved her mother more than anything on earth. More than mangoes, more than playing by the stream, more than the dolls her father carved for her from soft wood. Her mother was her world. The smell of her wrapper, the sound of her humming while she cooked, the feeling of her fingers braiding Adana's hair each morning. But Adana had noticed something too. Her mother cooked at night. Not in the evening, when other mothers cooked. Not at dusk, when the fires were lit and the compounds filled with the clatter of pots and the chatter of women. Nkechi cooked late, very late, after Obiora was asleep.
after the village was silent, after even the crickets had grown tired of their own songs, Adana would lie on her mat, eyes closed, pretending to sleep, and listen. She would hear her mother rise. She would hear the soft pad of bare feet on the earth floor. She would hear the creak of the cooking house door. And then, after a while, she would smell it. That smell, that impossible, beautiful, heartbreaking smell that was like every good memory distilled into vapor. One night, Adana decided to look. She did not plan it. She was not suspicious. She was a child, and children are curious the way rivers are wet. It is simply what they are. She waited until the smell filled the hut. Then she slipped off her mat. She crossed the main room. She pushed open the door of the hut and stepped into the compound. The cooking house was separate from the main hut. A small, round structure with a thatched roof and a single low doorway. Orange light flickered from inside. Smoke curled from the roof.
Adana crept forward. Her bare feet made no sound on the packed earth. She reached the doorway and crouched down. And she looked inside. What she saw, she would remember for the rest of her life. Her mother stood in the center of the cooking house. The fire burned in the pit beneath the large clay pot. The pot was bubbling, steam rising in thick, fragrant clouds. But Nkechi was not standing at the pot. She was standing 3 feet away from it, in the middle of the room, with her arms stretched wide, fingers splayed, palms facing the ceiling. Her head was tilted backward. Her eyes were open, but entirely white. No iris, no pupil, just smooth, blank whiteness, like boiled eggs pressed into her skull. Her mouth was open, and from it came a sound. Not a word, not a song. A frequency. A vibration so low and so deep that Adana felt it in her teeth, in her bones, in the space behind her eyes. The walls of the cooking house trembled. The surface of the soup rippled in concentric circles, as though the sound itself was stirring it.
And the pot was filling. Adana watched, frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe, as the soup rose inside the pot. Slowly, steadily, impossibly. There was nothing going in, no ingredients being added, no vegetables, no meat, no water. The pot was filling from within, as though the sound was creating the food. And then Adana's eyes moved downward, and she saw something that broke the world in half. Her mother's feet were not touching the ground. Nkechi hovered 1 inch, 2 inches. Her toes dangled above the earth, swaying gently, as though she was suspended by invisible strings from the ceiling. A cockroach ran across the floor near Adana's foot. Startled, the girl jerked. Her elbow hit the edge of the clay water pot by the doorway. Crack! The pot shattered. Water splashed across the ground. The humming stopped. The silence was instantaneous and total. The fire snapped. The pot continued to bubble, but the room was silent. Nkechi's feet touched the ground. Her head tipped forward. Her eyes brown again, human again, warm again, found her daughter in the doorway. For one heartbeat, Adana saw something in her mother's face that she had never seen before. Not anger, not guilt. Something worse. Sadness. Deep, old, ancient sadness. The sadness of a woman who knew that this moment was coming and had been dreading it for 7 years. Go back to bed, Adana. The voice was gentle, loving, normal. Go back to bed, my daughter. You were dreaming. But Adana was not dreaming, and they both knew it.
Adana did not tell anyone immediately. For 3 days, she watched her mother. She studied her the way you study a stranger, looking for something different, something wrong, something that would confirm or deny what she had seen. But Nkechi was the same warm smile, the same gentle hands braiding her hair, the same soft humming while she washed clothes at the stream, the same mother. Except that now, when Adana ate her mother's food, she felt something she had never felt before. A question sitting in her stomach like a stone. What am I eating? On the 4th day, Adana told her friend, a girl named Nena, 2 years older, the daughter of the market woman who sold palm oil. She told her in a whisper, behind the big mango tree, during the afternoon when the adults were resting.
Nena's eyes went wide. She ran straight home and told her mother. By sunset, the entire village knew. The whispers moved through Umueke like fire through dry grass, compound to compound, hut to hut, mother to mother, husband to wife. Nkechi cooks with witchcraft. She floats above the ground. Her eyes turn white. The food comes from nothing, from the air, from the spirits. She has been feeding us food from the other side. That last phrase, food from the other side, is the one that lodged itself in the village's collective throat. In Igbo cosmology, the other side is the spirit world, the land of the dead, the place where ancestors dwell and where forces that are not meant for human hands operate in ways that human minds cannot comprehend. If Nkechi's food came from there, then every person who had eaten it, every man, every woman, every child, every elder had consumed something that was never meant for the living. Obiora heard the whispers while sitting in front of the blacksmith's forge. He heard them and dismissed them. My wife is a good cook, he said, smiling. People are jealous, that is all.
But that evening, when he returned home, something was different. Nkechi was sitting outside the hut, not cooking. Her hands were in her lap. Her face was still. She looked at Obiora the way a person looks at the last sunset they will ever see, with desperate, quiet love. "What is wrong?" he asked. "Sit down, my husband." He sat. "Adana saw me," Nkechi said. The air between them changed. Obiora felt it, a heaviness, as though the sky had lowered itself by an inch. "Saw you doing what?" Nkechi looked at him, and in her eyes, he saw the truth before she spoke it. He saw it the way you see lightning before you hear thunder, a flash that illuminates everything for one terrible second. "I am not what you think I am, Obiora." His breath stopped. "I am not from the next village. I am not from any village. I came from the river. I came from beneath the water, from the place where the current touches the bottom and the bottom touches something deeper. I have been there for longer than your village has existed." She spoke quietly,
calmly, as though she were telling him what she had cooked for dinner. I chose you because you are kind. Because when the other men looked at me with hunger, you looked at me with something else. Something I had not felt in a very long time. And I wanted, just once, to know what it was like to live among you. To cook. To sleep beside someone who was warm. To hold a child. Her voice cracked, just slightly, like a hairline fracture in a clay pot. The food comes from me, from what I am. It is not poison. It is not evil. It is the only gift I had to give. It is the only way I knew how to love you. Obiora stared at his wife, his beautiful, gentle, impossible wife. Adana told the village. Nkechi said, I know. They will come for me. I know. Will you let them? The question was so simple, so small, and it contained the weight of everything.
They came the next morning. Not with torches, not with weapons. This was not a mob. It was worse than a mob. It was the village. Organized, deliberate, led by the chief himself, with the medicine man at his side and Ikena, the chief's son, standing just behind, his face carved from satisfaction. They filled Obiora's compound. 30, 40, 50 people. The same people who had smiled when they ate Nkechi's food. The same people who had called her Neoma. The same children who had run to her with their bowls. Now they stood in silence and stared at her. The way you stare at a snake you have just discovered sleeping in your child's bed. The chief spoke first. His voice was heavy with authority. And something else. Something that sounded like shame. Nkechi, daughter, or whatever you are, the village has heard things. Things that cannot be ignored. Nkechi stood in the doorway of her hut. Obiora stood beside her. Adana clung to her mother's wrapper, face buried in the cloth. Is it true? The chief asked. Do you cook with means that are not of this world? Silence. Nkechi looked at the faces, one by one. The market women who had praised her, the elders she had healed, the children she had fed. Every single face was closed to her now. Every single eye held the same message. You are not one of us. Yes, Nkechi said. The word fell like a stone into deep water. Ripples of murmuring spread through the crowd. Mothers pulled their children closer. Men stepped back. But it is not what you think, she continued. Then explain, the chief said. The food carries no curse. It carries no darkness. It is made from what I am. The same way your rivers produce fish and your trees produce fruit. I am a source, not a sorcerer. I have harmed no one. I have taken nothing from anyone. I have only given. The medicine man, Dibia Okafo, a thin, angular man with chalk-marked cheeks and cowrie shells woven into his beard, stepped forward. He had been studying Nkechi with narrowed eyes since the moment he arrived. What you are, he said slowly, does not belong here.
What you give, we did not ask for. And what you have put inside the bodies of every person in this village, in the bodies of children, without telling us what it was or where it came from. He shook his head. That is not a gift. That is a violation.
The words hit Nkechi like a physical blow. Adana whimpered against her wrapper. Obiora spoke. His voice was quiet but firm. She has healed your sick. She has fed your hungry. She has done nothing but serve this village since the day she arrived. And now you come to her door like she's the enemy? She lied, Ikenna said, stepping forward, his voice sharp with vindication. She lied about what she is. She lied about the food. She lied about everything. How do we know she's not poisoning us? How do we know we have not all been cursed? Because you are all healthier than you have ever been? Obiora shouted. Look at yourselves. Look at your children. They are strong. They are well. She did that. She did that. And what is the price? The medicine man asked quietly. Nothing from the spirit world comes without a price. You know this, Obiora. You have always known this. That sentence landed in a place that Obiora could not defend. Because the medicine man was right. And Obiora had known it. Somewhere deep, somewhere he had refused to look. From the very beginning. From the first meal. From the first impossible, heartbreaking, too good to be true bite. Nothing from the other side comes free.
He turned to Nkechi. Is there a price? Nkechi looked at her husband. Her eyes were full. Yes. The compound went silent. Even the wind stopped. What is it? Obiora whispered. And Nkechi said the words that broke him. Me. I am the price. Every meal I cook takes something from me, from what I am, from the time I have left. I have been giving myself away, piece by piece, meal by meal, since the day I arrived. Not because I was forced to, because I chose to. Her voice trembled. I chose to feed the children. I chose to heal the elders. I chose to love you with the only thing I had. And yes, it is costing me. It has been costing me from the first day. But it was mine to give. Mine. And I gave it freely. Tears ran down her face. Adana was sobbing into her wrapper. Obiora's jaw was trembling. How much time do you have left? He asked. Nkechi looked at him with those deep brown eyes, the eyes that had chosen him when no one else would. And she smiled. That same quiet smile. Enough. She did not say enough for what. The chief gave Obiora until sunrise. She must leave the village, the chief declared, by first light. If she stays, we cannot protect your family. The village has spoken. Ikenna added, loudly enough for all to hear. Send her back to wherever she came from. That night, Obiora sat outside his hut. The moon was a sliver, barely enough light to see by. The compound was quiet. Even the insects seemed to be holding their breath. Inside, Nkechi was packing. Not much. The small bundle she had arrived with. Nothing from the hut. Nothing from the life they had built. She was leaving the way she had come, with only herself. Adana sat between them, looking from one to the other, not understanding why the world was ending. Obiora spoke into the darkness.
Come with me. Nkechi stopped packing. Leave with me. We will go, the three of us. We will find another village, another place. We will start again.
Nkechi shook her head slowly. They will know, Obiora. Wherever I go, eventually they will know what I am, and it will end the same way. Then we will keep moving. And Adana, what life is that for her? Always running, always hiding, always afraid that her mother will be discovered? Obiora's voice broke. Then what? I just let you walk into the forest and disappear? I just forget that you exist? I just go back to being the man no one remembers?
Nkechi crossed the room. She knelt in front of her husband. She took his face in both hands. And she held him the way you hold something precious that you know you are about to lose. You are never the man no one remembers. You are the man I chose. And no matter what happens next, no matter where I go or what I become, you will always be that man. She kissed his forehead. Let me go, Obiora. Not because the village demands it. Let me go because I love Adana too much to let her grow up in a place where her mother is called a witch.
Before first light, Nkechi cooked one last meal. She did not use the sound. She did not use whatever she was. She cooked the way any woman cooks. With her hands, with fire, with the simple ingredients from the garden she had planted. Cassava, pepper, a few greens, water from the stream. It was a simple meal, the simplest she had ever made. But when Obiora ate it, he tasted the same thing he had tasted the very first time. Not the supernatural richness, not the impossible depth, but the love. The love had always been there in every meal, every bowl, every bite. It had never been the magic. It had always been her. He wept.
Nkechi lifted Adana from the mat where she slept. She held her daughter against her chest and breathed in the smell of her hair, palm oil and earth and childhood. She whispered something into the girl's ear, something no one else heard, something between a mother and a child that belongs to no one else. Then she set Adana down. She wrapped herself in her white cloth. She picked up her bundle and she walked out of the compound, through the village, past the empty market stalls, past the chief's compound, past the great tree in the square where she had fed every hungry child, and towards the river. Obiora followed her, not to stop her, just to watch her go, just to hold the sight of her for as long as he could.
At the river's edge, Nkechi turned one last time. "Take care of our daughter," she said. "I will. Tell her that her mother was not a witch. I will. Tell her that her mother loved her." His voice was barely a sound. "She knows." Nkechi nodded. She turned to the river. The water was still. The surface reflected the first pale light of dawn, silver and pink and trembling. She stepped in, one foot, then the other. The water rose around her ankles, her knees, her waist. She did not stop. She did not look back. The water reached her shoulders, her neck, her chin, and then the river took her. Gently, the way a hand closes around something beloved.
The surface closed over her head without a ripple, without a splash, without a sound. She was gone, and the river flowed on, as it always had, carrying whatever Nkechi was back to wherever she had come from.
Within a week, the village changed. The children grew thin again. The elders' coughs returned. Mama Ada, who had risen from her sick bed after Nkechi's pepper soup, fell ill again and did not recover. The chief's cough, the one Nkechi's broth had cured in a single night, came back with a vengeance. The food in the village tasted like what it was: cassava, yam, water, good, honest, ordinary food. But after tasting what Nkechi had given them, ordinary felt like punishment. Obiora did not speak of his wife. He did not answer questions. He farmed his narrow strip of land. He fed his daughter simple meals. He braided her hair clumsily, the way a father does when there is no mother to do it right. And Adana grew. She grew tall and quiet and watchful, with her mother's deep brown eyes and her father's steady patience. She did not speak of what she had seen in the cooking house. She did not speak of her mother at all. But every evening, just before sunset, she would walk to the river. She would sit on the bank and she would hum a low, gentle melody that she did not remember learning. A melody that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than memory. And sometimes, not always, not every time, but sometimes the river would hum back. The same melody, note for note, carried on the current from somewhere beneath the surface. And Adana would smile, and she would whisper, "Hello, Mama." This story does not have a villain. Think about that. Nkechi was not evil. She gave everything she had, literally pieces of herself, to feed a hungry village. She loved a man no one else would look at. She asked for nothing in return. The village was not evil. They were afraid. They discovered that something they did not understand had entered their bodies, their children's bodies, without their knowledge. Their fear was human. Obiora was not evil. He loved his wife. He would have left everything to stay with her. But he could not protect her from a truth that was too large for one man to carry. Even Ikenna, the jealous chief's son who whispered poison, was he evil? Or was he simply a man who loved a woman who did not choose him and let that rejection curdle into cruelty? The only question that matters, the question this story asks every person who hears it, is this: if someone you loved fed you with magic, with something beyond your understanding, something that came at a cost you did not know about, would you want to know? Or would you rather just eat and be grateful and never ask where it came from? Because that is what the people of Umueke chose in the end. They chose to ask, and the answer cost them everything. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. And some questions, once asked, destroy the very thing you are trying to protect. So tonight, when you sit down to eat, and the food is good, and the person who made it loves you, maybe do not ask how. Maybe just say, thank you. Now, if this story moved you, then you are ready for what comes next. There is another story from this land. A story about a king who had 100 sons.
But the throne chose the son he hated most, the son he tried to kill at birth. That story is coming. Subscribe now, and I will tell you why destiny cannot be murdered. This is your moment. Drop a comment below and answer me honestly. Was the village right to send Nkechi away? Or did they make the biggest mistake of their lives? I want to hear your answer. And if this story hit you somewhere deep, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next tale.